Hello and welcome back. And I thought today we'd talk about what do I do if I need to record away from mains power? What gear have I got that I use to record out and about on batteries? Well, I've been using for many years Zoom products. I keep them in a little box like this. And I started out with a Zoom H4n. So it's a sort of consumer unit really. It's got a couple of XLRs on the bottom and built into the top are a little XY pair. It's got a little socket on it so you can stick it on a microphone stand if you wanted to, pointed at something. Now, I mean, for me, apart from sort of modern music, I've always been really quite interested in old-fashioned music, classical stuff, choirs, small orchestra, string quartets, that sort of stuff. And, you know, you wander off to something like a church and you can plonk something like this in front of a group of musicians or a group of singers, and it does a pretty good job. And I've always liked them. They're quite straightforward. Audio quality wise, yeah, they're absolutely fine. I've got no grief whatsoever with any of the things that these things do. This one did the job for quite a while, and it was a really useful little sort of bit of kit, not particularly expensive, and it did everything I wanted. You know, you could jam a foam windshield on the front if you had to use it outside, and all in all, I quite liked it. When I outgrew it, I bought one of these. Different sort of beast altogether. I mean, this is an H6, so it's sort of next sort of category up, I suppose. Yeah, fair enough. You can actually pull out the box the little sort of XY head, or I've got an MS stereo one as well. So you can take the mic, stick it on the top, jam it on there, and that converts that recorder to be able to use, in this case, the MS head. Little gain control on the front there. Again, really simple, and if you wanted to, you can put them on a stand. And I use this for all sorts of things. I mean, I actually use it in the studio sometimes. If there's something I need to record, maybe I'm testing some microphones or something, I could stick them into my interface, which is in that rack there, and record it into Cubase. But sometimes I might use this. Noise-wise, really quiet preamps. I don't have any trouble at all with this in terms of performance. And it can record 4 inputs. There's 2 on that side, 2 on that side, plus the stereo mic that you clip on the front. And that works really well. The only thing I don't like is the menu system. The menu system is actually really quite comprehensive, but it's accessed through a little knob and a button on the side, and you have to shift through the menus there and select it. On the front of the unit, it's just 4 volume controls. So they're adjustable, easy to get to, you can use them. It's just a little bit awkward sometimes in terms of the shape. I mean, there's no way that you can sort of hang it round your neck or anything like that. It's quite difficult. And sometimes when you're recording, you actually need to get hold of the inputs that you've got selected, slap them in, route them to somewhere, get them recording, and this can do it. But there's just a few more button pushes. The display at the bottom is quite nice. It's sort of quite a posh display, I suppose. Really, it's full colour. It comes up on there, and it's got an awful lot of information on it. So it's okay. The snag is that you sort of need to hold it in front of you like that to operate, which uses your hands up, doesn't it? And that's the killer for me. Sometimes you actually just need to be able to adjust a knob with one hand while you're holding something else. I'll explain. So how about if you're on a job and you need to be able to use one of these and this at the same time? That suddenly becomes a bit more tricky, doesn't it? Because to adjust the knobs on here, while I can see the levels and things on the meter, I've got to hold it in one hand and use my thumb to do that. If I then need to go and press one of the other buttons, you have to sort of pass it about. It's just awkward. It's not impossible, but it is just a bit awkward. So there's a progression between, the H6, which in performance terms I'm totally happy with. It's just a little bit awkward in your hand. So how do I do that? Well, I stuck with Zoom because I've been really pleased with the performance, and I had a look at a different sort of different product range, I suppose, really. What I ended up with is this, which you can stick over your shoulder. It's in a nice bag. It's a really weird bag, actually. More on this in a minute. But inside this is a Zoom H4n. Now, I've got no need to go for anything better than this. It does everything I need it to do. It does it really well. Differences? Well, it's about twice the weight of the other Zoom. And even though it's fairly small, it's actually got the important things on the front. So the way this actually works is a bit different. It's actually got 4 controls on the front, and inside the case you can see what's going on. The case will keep the wind and the wet out. I mean, when I say waterproof, I mean rainproof, really. It's not something you could dunk in the water, but if you're out on the moors and you're trying to record something, you don't want to let the water in, and this will let you work it reasonably easily with gloves on. It's got 4 input gains on the front, and there's 4 sockets on the side, so you can plug your mics in there. Menus are a bit more sophisticated. All the normal things are there, but it's also got lots of little extra features that make life for a sort of recordist easier. One of the things that is really quite nice is if you're doing sound and you've got cameras, then it's really quite nice to keep the takes that you've got sort of marked as sort of the current ones. It's got a button that you can push that will put a take into a completely separate folder if it fell flat, or you had to stop halfway through. So it's got some really useful features like that. But one of the nice things is the headphone preamp is nice and loud. So when you stick the headphones in the side and turn the volume up, you can actually hear what's going on. Now that comes in really handy. If you use, like me, things like DT100s, they're great for keeping the outside noises out and letting you hear what's going on. Now the snag with DT100s is they need quite a lot of audio power to drive them to a decent level. They're not a sensitive headphone, and the little amps that are fitted in the H4 and the H6 frankly don't have enough volume. So while the H4 has plenty of volume on its headphone output, it rather nicely has a 1/4 inch headphone socket. Now 1/4 inch headphone sockets are really strong, they're quite reliable, they don't mind being bashed about too much. If you knock a 1/4 inch headphone plug that's stuck into a socket on a piece of equipment, it tends to survive. You might actually bend the plug rather than do any harm. 3.5mm connections that are on the H4 and the H6 are not as strong. Very often 3.5mm connections are actually soldered straight onto the circuit boards inside. So if you use an adapter to give you the 1/4 inch, it sticks out about that far, and there's enough leverage on that if you give it a good yank, it's quite possible to break the 3.5mm sockets. I've not done it on the Zooms. I mean, I've been quite lucky, but I think with something that you're intending to use outside, there's always the possibility of breaking them. So a 3.5mm socket that might be brilliant indoors is just a bit of a liability, I feel, on a bit of pro kit if you want to use it outside. And I hate adapters. You shouldn't really get too excited about cases, but the F4 case is a 2-compartment job. The recorder will go in the top section, so you can just post that in there, and it gives you a nice little section at the bottom that you could use for radio mics or odds and ends, spare bits and pieces. So that's quite a nice case, but it's got these weird flappy bits on the side. What are they for? Well, they're to give you access to the sockets on the side. So you can stick your hand in the side, get access to the 4 XLR inputs, and the one on the other side, that'll give you access to the headphone sockets and the outputs. It's actually also got time code in and out on here as well. So if you're using any other kit that needs time code, that can be done quite nicely. But the idea of a bag with Velcro on it like that means that even when you've got the cables going in, you've stopped that path for water to get in. So it's a rather nice idea. They actually come off. You can disconnect that to get access to the side. What else can I tell you? Well, this has actually got quite a lot of little useful features. If you're used to using hardware mixers, then you know about things like pre-fade listen, the PFL button that's on lots of kit. So irrespective of what level you've got the input set at, you can actually press the button that says PFL and it's routed to your ears. So you can always check what's going on. It's a bit of an unusual sort of design, really, I suppose. What you've actually got, tape transport buttons on the bottom. So that's your rewind, stop, record, play. They're on there. They are quite small. If you've got big chunky gloves on, they're still quite difficult to press, but you can do it with your sort of the end of your finger. And then a nice menu system. So basically you access the memory and then you've got a knob that pushes in to select things. The one on the 8.6 was a strange sort of up and down knob that you pushed in. And I always find that quite tricky to work. But this is fairly simple. Press the menu, gets you to the feature you want. Turn the knob. When you find the thing you want, press it. So all in all, this is a really nice recorder. It's just solid. It sort of gives you a bit more confidence that you're going to get it right. In fairness, that one never let me down. They eat through batteries. That can eat through batteries in ridiculous amounts of time. So the appetite for batteries is fairly fearsome. Same thing on here, really. But it's just a necessary feature, isn't it? If you're going to use things on battery power, then you're not going to do much with it. You could use them on rechargeables, I guess. They're not actually designed for it. On here, you either use it on batteries or anything up to 16 volts. It's 9 to 16 volts can be applied on the side. And it goes in through a much more secure type socket. It's a little 4-pin socket on the side that clicks in and is fairly positive. You can't accidentally pull them out. It does also let you send signals out from this to something else. It's got features that you can engage or turn off. It's got the usual USB connector on the side, so you can actually use this to go. Well, you could use it as an interface if you really wanted to. It's perfectly capable of doing that. I don't think I've ever used it like that, but that seems to work okay. And if you want to, you can even feed audio into the return socket on the side. So you could route through to here a stereo output from maybe a camera, which then, if you wanted to, can come up in your ears so you know what's going on. All in all, a rather nice piece of kit. I have to say, there's no real difference in audio quality. On paper, this is better. And maybe if you're going to go up to the higher sample rates and things like that, then yes, you would hear it. I struggle to hear the difference when I'm recording on 48k, which is my normal sample rate. On 48k, to my ears, these all sound the same. My impression is there's a little less noise when the gains are turned up full on here than there is in the 2. But that's just an objective thing. It's something that never really comes up, and even when you're using things like shotguns and things like that. This does the job, but equally the others are pretty good. And there's a big price difference between sort of the entry ones and something like this. But for my money, this does it because it's solid, has lots of extra features in the menu that you won't use very often, but if you want to, you could. I mean, one of the sort of things that this can cope with that the others can't is there is a facility to split an input to 2 channels, but with different gains. Now that's really handy because, you know, you set the gain setting, and what happens when it suddenly goes over and gets distorted? You know, your whole take is wrecked. So a lot of recordists quite like the idea that you set one a little hotter. So that's going to be the one that you use for most of the time. But if you do go over, you've got the same microphone source feeding a second channel with lower gain. So in the edit you can fix it. So it's a little bit of a sort of get you out of trouble thing. It does have limiters and all the other gizmos that you would expect. I'm not going to cover those now, but just to say that if you want them, they are there. But if anybody offers you one of these things, you know, it's probably worth considering because they're nice pieces of kit. Anyway, that's enough on these. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.